Hello and welcome to No Sweat. I'm joined here today by three fine gentlemen. My name is Luca and with me is JD. Hello, mate.
Fantastic to be here, Luca. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome anytime, mate. Hello to James.
Good evening.
And Dodsy, how are you, mate?
What a day. Good to be here, mate. A week closer to footy, so can't complain.
We are. It is an exciting time because it looks like we have a return date to footy. June 11. Pencil it in on your calendars. Just pencil, not pen yet. But it's looking likely. The noise is saying that now that the states around Australia have started relaxing the laws, we're looking like we're coming out of this COVID situation. The schedule seems to be changing. We were expecting it to run all throughout the week. Now, it seems like Thursday to Monday, we're going to have footy every week. So it might look like regular footy. But what happens before then? Well, we expect it to be slowly ramping up into team training. But at the moment, short-term players will be training in small groups, possibly still individually, depending on which state. Knock, knock, Daniel Andrews. Then they might ramp into small groups of 5 to 10. And after that, potentially about 2 weeks worth of team training, 10 days to 2 weeks worth of team training before the season gets going. So we're on the home straight. Who's excited? James, tell me you're frothing for an Essendon return.
I actually absolutely can't wait for footy to come back. So obviously you mentioned June 11, so that's most likely going to be the Queen's Birthday clash, so between Melbourne and Collingwood. The big fight MND clash. So yeah, totally looking forward to it. It's obviously come back a little bit quicker than most would have expected. We're all expecting probably late June to mid-July, that type of time frame. But no, absolutely stoked that it's going to be on its way back sooner rather than later.
John, what are you looking forward to, mate?
Social media football pages getting back to normal. I actually had to unsubscribe the other day from all the footy-related pages that I follow just because there's nothing actually footy-related on there, and I couldn't stand it anymore. It's just rumour, gossip, innuendo-based stuff. So I got off that. So I can't stand it. Really looking forward to the footy getting back. I'm still perhaps erring on the side of caution in my own mind of not getting too excited for that date because I just feel that Victoria in particular and the season we're coming into, I reckon the restrictions won't be eased up quite then. But purely no evidence, just opinion.
Look, if I were a North Melbourne supporter, I wouldn't be getting too excited either.
Okay, so you've gone below the belt nice and early then. I'll remember that. That's all right.
You actually stole my joke there because I was going to say if I was a North supporter, I wouldn't be too excited either. They did get a win, but ninth on the ladder, so they would have missed the 8 if the season finished after round 1. So.
Luca won, Sam won.
Just reading the paper this morning, Jeff Kennett, obviously the Hawthorn president, has come out and he expects AFL clubs to be given a full schedule for the 2020 season within the week. So that's obviously good news as well. So we could have fixtures, area of where the games are going to be, whether it's located locally for all clubs or fly in, fly out. So yeah, looking forward to seeing that.
John?
Luke, just, and I haven't done any research on this, but a question, I guess. So you're saying Thursday to Monday would be when the games would be scheduled then, as in a round? So people are only playing one game upon that?
It's not clear yet.
Across those days? Okay.
Yeah, it's not clear yet. Yeah. But initially it was suggested that we should just ignore the term round and it would be purely on a games situation, and whenever they could play a game, they would.
Okay.
But I think it sort of seems to be that from the States, this return to life, I suppose, is a little bit more organised than we initially thought it would be. So there might be room for a bit more consistency in the footy calendar, but at this stage, there's no real clarity on that. And it may be that some teams will have to play a Thursday and a Monday. There might still be occasional Tuesday, Wednesday matches, but I think they're trying to avoid them as much as possible.
Okay.
But I guess the interesting thing from this is that clubs have been saying they wanted 3 to 4 weeks of training time to ramp up before they started. And this week, we find out that one club's gone early. Adelaide Football Club, what are you doing with yourselves? Sort it out. For those who don't know, they've had players return to South Australia in a hotel complex in the Barossa Valley. And about 15 of these players were seen training together, organised by the Adelaide Football Club when they weren't allowed. And all this time about the AFL preaching social distancing and stay by yourselves and don't do anything stupid. Well, here they are, organised by the club. And we can add this onto another failure on the long list of things, of recent struggles they've had at the club. Cultural questions, a lot of drama gone around this week. But in terms of the competition, does the footy club deserve to be punished for this, or is it an individual kind of thing?
I definitely don't think there should be docked points, which is what's been going around. If you think about something, it's a $1,600 fine. And obviously there was more than one. So I wouldn't dock the whole team just for something like that. It just would further add a negative to already a negative season. I wouldn't potentially go down that path. Potentially player sanctions could be more necessary.
What would you give them? Because it's 15 players, it's a lot of sanctions. Is it monetary?
Well, first of all, they'd have to pay the $1,600 fine. That's obviously non-negotiable. But from the club's perspective, you'd probably want to dock them some type of match pay. But again, in this type of season where they're already going to be taking some type of payment decrease, it's sort of hard to ask them. But obviously, they've done the wrong thing. But then it comes down to who from the Adelaide Football Club actually decided that it's fine to actually go and have this, well, not camp, because they've already had a botched camp. Yeah. So obviously you can't base all of the blame on the players when it was probably a club directive. So something has to go back onto the club. Some talk I heard earlier would be some draft pick penalties. So you got maybe second or third round penalty. You wouldn't take a first rounder. But definitely I can see at least one third rounder being taken away.
Yeah, I'm not sure the players are, to be honest, at fault here at all. There's no way known that 15 players go off and run a training camp and the coaches don't know about it. Like from what I've been tracking with North, I know there's Zoom meetings happening basically every single day. So they know exactly where they were. So I don't think the players can be fully held responsible. And this is a bit of a bugbear with me with the AFL in certain aspects of when the AFL crosses the line into, I guess, legal community matters, if you want to call it that. So they've breached something that's un-AFL related as far as the social distancing and all that sort of stuff. So the punishment should only apply from that aspect. The AFL, from my personal point of view, shouldn't have a say in that aspect. I think they're crossing a boundary there of where their jurisdiction starts and ends. The potential for higher than the $1,600 fines or whatever it might have been, that's the risk they took, not repercussions with the AFL enforcing a penalty upon them. So I don't think the AFL should dock any points or get involved in it at all, to be honest.
Were they actually breaking state restriction rules, though, in South Australia at the time?
Yes, they were, yeah.
Because
I think... Go on.
I've seen a bit of back and forth that apparently they were in a group, but they were paired away from each other. So the Adelaide Football Club's come out and said they've done nothing wrong with the state's restrictions, but hence the AFL side of things, they have to come in and sort out a punishment for them. But it's a touchy issue, isn't it? It's
Adelaide said that initially, but then Matty Nix had to come out and apologise for doing this because not only were they just players there, but also in that hotel complex was I believe a physio or a medical trainer, an actual coach. And so it was quite organised and targeted by them to have everybody in the same building. And then when they were seen training, like the only way this came out was because actually people stopped and saw them doing it as a group. So it was proper footy training as a group. So it was a bit of a big question mark over what they were thinking behind this one. Dodd?
I think a fair punishment for them is to strip them from the 97 premiership. And then North Melbourne.
Here we go. I'm going to take 1 point off for you there, Sam. Thank you very much, mate. Well done.
That might go down all right in Tasmania. I don't know. We'll find out next year.
That's another one for Luke.
So let's say we do come back to footy and we play 17 games as is proposed. Do you think this season has an asterisk? A lot of people have been speaking about this. I, for one, would not care at all if my club did well this year, but that's unlikely to happen. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think it is a full season? Is it valid, James? What do you reckon?
I've got a bit of a bone to pick. I don't want anyone to sugarcoat what this season is. Obviously, I'm happy to see football back. But to be honest, it just doesn't mean as much as another season. I find that it's sort of will always have an asterisk on it. So whoever wins the flag in 2020 will always be known as the person that won it when we only played 17 games. We had no fans at the games. It sort of just feels like a glorified extended preseason for 2021. It's just to satisfy the broadcasters and get some extra money for the AFL. I find that it will always have the asterisks and will always mean less to me personally. But that's just my opinion. Over to you.
But if every team is competing on the same playing level, every team has the same restrictions, the same problems, how is it any different to another season?
Well, that's like saying if you change any rule and everyone's on the same footing. You could change goals to mean 4 points. Everyone's on the same level playing field. But is it actually football? Is it actually what we have known to be the legacy of a premiership winner?
But I guess you could argue that for every time there has been a rule change in the AFL. And I think this is where making comparisons from season to season and years gone by is really irrelevant. In part, it's like if someone wins the Brownlow, but let's say there's just not a lot of good, genuine players playing in the league at that time, whereas you may play in a different era and there's guns all around the place. Is that Brownlow worth more than another Brownlow, so to speak, Luke?
Yeah, exactly. I agree, because it's not like you're comparing premierships over a 5-year span. It's like you are the premier of this season's football. It doesn't make you a better premier than the premier from 10 years ago. That's irrelevant. It's about who played the best this season. And if everybody has the same parameters, then why can't you compare, Dodd?
Yeah, we've seen in a few other sports have lockout seasons and have a shortened season, and they've said there's been an asterisk with that. But I do see what James is saying, but I just think after 5-10 years, no one's going to look back and think, oh, yeah, that was an asterisk season. I think people will just move on and forget about it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, what do you think, John?
I suppose potentially a lot of it just comes down to perspective. And I guess you could look at it that the winner of this season could nearly be given more credit for how disrupted it is and how quickly the organisation could have potentially have bounced back given the circumstances that have played there. I see Jim's not happy with that one.
I don't want to hear that
and brave.
at all.
I can just I could just imagine a world where, just say the AFL was as cashed up as other sports may be. So just say, for example, I'm pretty sure the EPL they're in pretty good financial state. If we were in such a good financial state, I don't think there would have been the rush for hubs, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And B, to get all these games out as quickly as, or not as quickly as they can, but to get a season. It's just because I find that everything around coming back to footy has been based around the financial aspect of it. And obviously that's a evil you have to live with the AFL. So they're only doing what they can. But that's why I think that this season will always just be played just to satisfy the broadcasters, just to get that extra money. Which is, it's a fine business model, considering that if they don't do that, the AFL probably wouldn't have survived. But yeah, that's just how I'm looking at it. Dodd?
For me, probably I'm just gonna, if Hawthorn wins, I'll make every excuse under the sun. But yeah, if the Bombers or the Cats get up, I'll put a big asterisk next to that, I think.
Imagine winning a flag this year. Just say you're a Carlton supporter, you win the flag, and you're speaking into a group chat, and you go, "Yeah, we won the 2020 flag," and everyone's just like, "Who cares? That wasn't a real season."
It's going to be one of the hardest flag wins to ever defend. Like on a social level, it's like, oh, we won that flag. And then you have to back up all the reasons of why, as opposed to every smug Richmond supporter who's, oh, we won a flag. You've got nothing to say.
It definitely will take, like even the Collingwood win against St Kilda in the drawn grand final, the week after, like even then people are like, nah, doesn't count, So people will definitely be saying that about this year for sure.
Yeah, well, speaking of comparisons, there was a major comparison that broke out this week on radio and Twitter Footy World. And I suppose the question stems around, can you compare modern football to old football? Or can you separate an action in footy versus the legacy of a moment in footy? For those who don't know, Mr. Kane Corns, speaking on radio this week, said that Alex Jezelenko's mark in the grand final against Collingwood that we all know, Jezelenko, you beauty, we know the commentary so vividly, was overrated. And personally, I think the mark itself wasn't that great. Maybe if you're standing at the Olympics, 10 judges there, maybe it's a 6.5 out of 10 mark. But in a grand final against the arch enemies, getting nice and high, creating the excitement, getting a team to come from behind, huge in legacy, huge context and meaning.
The context behind that mark is humongous.
Sorry,
I don't think that would ever be disputed.
The mark itself was good, but
the mark itself was good. He had his knee in the guy's head. On the wing, mind you.
He got
You
high.
can't discredit the actual mark.
That's quite
You
low.
watch modern footy though. Okay,
That's
maybe
very
it's a
low.
7. I'm a
That's
tough
an
judge,
average.
okay? I'm a tough judge. But modern footy, you watch Jeremy Howe take 3 of those marks a year and no one blinks an eye because they don't really mean a whole lot in context of the match. Yeah, they're great individually. Jez's mark, I wouldn't say was incredible. Andrew Walker's mark is much better than Jez's mark. But
Yeah, but he took it on the
in terms
chest.
of meaning, the importance was so much higher here, James. You're just filthy because it was against Essendon.
Argument could be made for Magic Door there, by the way, as well. Probably the highest mark ever taken.
And that's what I'm saying. There are plenty of modern day marks that just aren't as influential in a game. So I think I understand both sides of the story. But it's an interesting question to me whether you can separate the moment itself from its meaning and its context. It was suggested this week, Dom Sheed's goal against Collingwood in the grand final a couple of years ago. The kick was nothing special. I mean, it was under pressure. He was
Nothing
tight angle.
special.
No, hang on, let me finish. Let me finish. It was a tight angle. It was a good kick, but it wasn't absolutely mind-bendingly incredible.
I think
Except
the
it
degree
meant
of
so much.
difficulty, the degree of
that's-
difficulty on that kick, he was kicking it on the fence, drop punt.
Wrong
You
foot.
can't get any harder than that.
All right, I might have gone a bit rich
Personally.
saying nothing special, but
It was a very good goal, but the moment made it spectacular.
exactly.
Yeah.
And are those things always related, or can you compare separate moments to the action that they're taking?
Yeah, look, when you're basing around context, obviously it's hard to judge what is better, judging by the eye test and from what it actually delivers from that mark. If you're going to be ranking things, I think you would have to take both into consideration. But that's just because if you do take a spectacular mark, the moment itself does make it a lot bigger. So obviously for that Jezza mark, that was the catalyst behind Collingwood being belted for the next 10 years, or so Eddie Maguire said, which is why he took
Deservedly so.
umbrage to that call. But yeah, obviously the moment can mean more at each individual stage. JD?
Well, I think we kind of already acknowledged this in the form of the Norm Smith medal. So we've actually got a specific medal and award for a specific occasion because being the best on that particular occasion is something special and is something spectacular to be able to do it under that sort of pressure. So I think, yeah, the moment and the event are very closely tied. In the same way, Zaharakis a couple of years ago kicked a goal. Good goal on the run. That's a point for me for mentioning Essendon. But again, the moment of being Anzac Day and that those moments, again, they enhance the action that's taken place.
That's a good way to put it. They enhance
that's right.
everything. Go for it, Dodd.
I think like with the Jezza mark, just say we rate it 8 out of 10, right? Or 7.5 out of 10. It's not
6.5, some would say.
But if we were living in that time period, we would rate that a 10 out of 10, even without context, because it was just something crazy for that time. But to compare it now, like every athlete's evolved over 30 years. So it's a bit unfair to even say that, even without context, that it was an average mark, because for that time, that was definitely not an average mark.
Well, I think one thing we can all agree on is that Jez's daughter jumping on the radio and blasting Kane was a little bit over the top. It was cringeworthy stuff to listen to. It was a classic overreaction. I don't know how you guys perceived it, but I was cringing. My skin was crawling.
That was terrible. What are your boys' thoughts on Kane Corns?
Love him.
I think he's really good at his job. He rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but that's what he's paid to do.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he is the ultimate antagonist. He does it perfectly. knows exactly how to get clicks. I think he's really good at what he's meant to do. Whether you like that or not, it's a different story, but I think he's pretty
I
successful.
love him. I think we need more of them in the AFL, to be honest. And the thing with Kane Cornes is he has media like he was a player. He was a tagger, and like now he's a tagger in the media. He excels at it. He's good at getting under the skin of people, gets the results, and the employers love him. Like his teammates love him, and SEN loves him because he's bringing in the clicks, the money, the cash.
Making Hutchie a happy man.
Yeah.
Might be the closest thing we've got to a Skip Bayless type in Australia, I think. Someone who talks a little bit too much sometimes, but they do it a little bit on purpose.
Sorry, can you explain that reference for me, Luke?
He's the Kane Cornes of the USA.
In which sport, just in general?
General sport, basketball and
Okay.
NFL. Yeah, he's a bit of an antagonist. You got a couple of the American media, but they really promote that and they love that personality that maybe isn't always straight down the line. And I think in Australia we can sometimes have a strong dislike for people who aren't normal. And in
It's
America,
tall
those
poppy
people
syndrome.
can be celebrated, but here it's sort of like, no, we don't want to hear other opinions.
James said it perfectly, the tall poppy syndrome. Like, there is no need for people to get that upset about a comment from Kane Cornes. Like what happened with Jez's daughter, that just doesn't need to happen. That's terrible. And like my favorite actual moment about Twitter is seeing people get furious at Kane Cornes because it really grinds people the wrong way.
He thrives on it. Listening
he
to
does.
mean tweets is hilarious. I love it.
Oh, he's the best at reading out those savage text messages and tweets.
I'm all for an opinion. To be honest, we probably need more Kane Corn types. I just don't like Kane Corns. I don't like him as an individual. Just the way Stephen Naismith, for instance. I love that he's got a strong opinion on just about every single thing. And yet, for some reason, Kane Corns just doesn't do it for me. So that was my obscure reference for the day.
It sounded like you said Stephen Naismith and not Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
That's the best.
All right. Well, moving on from that, we've had a pretty action-packed week in footy. There have been a lot of stories, a lot of podcasts, a lot of articles that have created much media attention. So this week on No Sweat, I'm wanting to start a new segment. And I think we're going to tentatively call it The Tribunal, where we haven't really got time to discuss these topics in depth, but we'll play a quick little word association going around the group. And I just want you to finish the sentence. So, John, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, okay.
Playing football in China is.
Ridiculous.
Dodd. Mick Malthouse is.
Very good.
James. David Koch is.
Commercially blinded.
I love it. John. Dean
Yes.
Laidley is.
Morally corrupt.
Juicy. Dodd. Buddy Franklin is.
The greatest player of all time.
James. We'll finish off with this one. Asada is.
A rabble.
And I want to finish off on that one. That was the first installment of The Tribunal. Thanks for joining. Brendan Goddard this week was on the Sacked podcast from Herald Sun. And as part of this two-part podcast so far, he went on to discuss a lot of his career, and it was quite interesting. But they touched on the drug saga at Essendon. He touched on a few things. But he went into a bit of detail about his contract issues and his departure from both the St Kilda and the Essendon footy clubs. Even though from, I think, the outside perspective, it could be understood that he did quite a lot for each club, and yet they still tried to move him out of the club. And I think all four of us have had a similar situation at all of our clubs where the legends of our club at some point need to move on. But how do you do it? What's the correct way to move on a legend of your club? John, you've had Brent Harvey, Nick Del Santo, just to name a few in recent years. Although
Yeah,
Del
I
Santo
suppose-
wasn't really a North legend, but
No, but I suppose a lot of them were of age as well. I think it's
Yes.
fair to say.
Yep.
Whereas BJ probably had a little bit more time. How many seasons was he at Essendon
I
for?
think he
Jim?
was 34 at the time, 33.
Oh, okay. No, fair enough. That was
I
a
might
bit
be
later
wrong.
than I thought then.
I might be wrong.
I think from the club pushing side of things, I don't know if there is a clean way to do it, to be honest. It all depends on the backroom conversations that take place with that player and how they come out and go about it, Luke.
Yeah, Goddard was 33. And I mean,
Yeah.
looking at it like this week, for example, I was discussing about Cade Simpson being at Carlton. He's currently the 4th highest games holder at Carlton. And if he finishes this season, will be the 3rd. And if he plays on next year, will probably be 2nd all-time at Carlton with about 350 games. But he's been on one-year deals for about 5 years now. And he seems like he's been quite open and honest with the club every year about reassessing at the end of each season, make sure he's playing the correct level of football required to keep going and to make sure his body can keep up to it. And I think that's a pretty good way to go about it if the player is happy. But sometimes they're not all roses. What do you think, James?
In Simpson's example, for Carlton, is there anyone knocking down the door for him to come in and take his spot? I think that's what you got to look at as well. So I listened to the Goddard podcast, and I found that primarily amongst other things, he was the most hot under the collar about the way that clubs, as you said, were handling sending the champions off. He just reckons that clubs don't get it right time and time again. So obviously he brought up Nicky Dale, who he played with, so with North, and he also brought up Rewalt. He pretty much just said clubs need to get better. They need to be more open with their communication. So he relayed a story of when Woosha told him that he wasn't going to get a contract. It was basically just Goddard was working out and he's like, just come have a quick chat. And then he gave him the news. I think Goddard was more wanting to know, look, this is what we're going to do. Thank you for your service. This is why we're doing it. You can see we've got, for example, in Essendon's case, we have Redmond who's coming through who needs more game time and you're taking a spot. I think that's what Goddard was looking for. And I think that's probably the better way to handle it, giving that player that peace of mind. So because they've given, in Goddard's example, 16, 17 years of their life to two clubs, but day in, day out, especially for Goddard, he was there during the hard times when there was no players that he was playing with other than Zaharakis. So, yeah, it's sort of you need to give that respect back to the player. I think that's what Goddard was getting at.
I think, yeah, that's that respect and just that honesty. I think Clarko's done it best with the honesty in the comp because you look at a guy like Sam Mitchell, 2016, he wins the best and fairest and then he's traded to West Coast a couple of weeks later. And they knew, he wanted to go out there to Perth and stuff. But Geelong, Hawthorn, a few of these teams, they've had these honest, hard conversations with your Stevie Johnsons, your Paul Chapmans, your Luke Hodges, and they've gone on to other clubs. And this is where I don't really have a problem with player loyalty because at the end of the day, it's a business. The teams want to stay at the top. These guys have been great for the club for years, but are they going to be, in your next premiership in the next 3 to 5 years? So you do have to have those honest, open conversations, I think. And that's where Goddard, I think, was disappointed because, it was a bit under the table, I think.
Can I relate this just to a personal real life situation? I actually had to retire a guy recently at work. But these conversations you have, to be honest, nearly years in advance. Like the guy was 72 when he retired, but you got to start planting. Yeah, exactly. So you really got to, I think those conversations should start happening early on. So as a player is starting to get to that 32, 33 age bracket, I find it really hard to believe that the clubs aren't having some conversation. I suppose you've got the obvious aspect of the form slumping and then those conversations about performance kick in. But if they're continuing on at a certain age, those conversations, they must be taking place within the club. I find it really hard to believe that if they just walked up to him in the gym, look, we're going to call quits on your career here now. I find it so hard to believe, James.
I think when you're looking at it from a player perspective, they're in an alpha sport, so they're going to never want to hear that now's the time to let it go. Obviously, there's a few examples where players know that their body isn't right anymore and they've given it up voluntarily, which is quite rare. But when you're dealing with all the egos of, no, I can go another season or two, I think that's where it gets a little bit murky. You just have to sort of find that basic middle ground.
And I think those conversations has to start at the start of the year so that the players know and the club knows at the end of the year. Things can change that cause a different outcome. But I think these guys at Hawthorn, Geelong, they knew that they were going to move on and they can talk to other clubs. They can assess their options. And I think in Goddard's case, he was a bit rushed because then he wanted to keep playing footy. And then he had a few other teams that maybe have already traded for players and don't have a spot for him on the list now. So these honest conversations need to happen at the start of the year for both the club and the player for sure.
I guess maybe the only reasoning sort of for and against is if you have those conversations at the start of the year, it can either like give a kick up the pants for the player to go, right, I've got to put on a solid season here, or if they know that there's the off chance that they're not going to have a contract, they may lose a bit of heart and their performance may dip off. So I suppose maybe clubs are just weighing that aspect of the mind as to whether how in depth those conversations go. I'm not sure without sort of being privy to it, but yeah.
Tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but hopefully these legends can be a bit happy and move on to a nice little career with more money in the media after, which a lot of them have done recently and been quite good. So what do you think, John?
Well, probably the only other thing is you got to remember they're doing a job and they're getting paid for it. So the reward for the job is actually the payment. So sometimes they're sort of looking for a little bit extra at the end of the glory. Oh, come on, let's be reasonable.
Put up or shut up. Do you want the money or the respect? Make your mind up.
Exactly it.
All right. And with that, I think it's time to move over to Australia's favourite trivia game, Footy IQ. Now, for those who haven't heard this before, we go around in a circle, one at a time, to list the answers to a question that I'll put at the start until either all of them are named or you get one wrong and you're out. Now, this week, boys, I have two topics. They're both quite difficult. I want you to pick what you want. Do you want sponsors or do you want snags?
Oh, snags sounds good for me. So.
And just snags as in hot dogs or snags as in goals?
Well, you'll find out in a minute.
Let's go snags first.
All right, snags it is. Snags is, I want you to name for me the top goal scorer for each football club in 2019. So last season, which player was the top goal scorer at each club or top goal kicker? Now, we're going to go in reverse order from last week. I told you they were tricky. We're going to go in reverse order for last week. So John will go first, James will go second, Dob will go third. We might be a little bit more lenient with the time on this one, considering how difficult some of them are. I thought it would be fairly straightforward until I looked up the answers, and then I was a bit shocked. So, John, you are up when you're ready.
Benny Brown, my friend. Benny Brown.
Benny Brown, nice and easy. On the board with 64 goals.
It wasn't lucky, was it?
Not yet.
I'll go next. Jesse Cameron.
Jeremy Cameron is correct. 76 goals. Dodd?
Tom Hawkins.
Tom Hawkins kicked 56 goals, was the top goal kicker for Geelong. John?
Tom Lynch.
Tom Lynch at Richmond kicked 63 goals and was the top goal kicker. James?
Let's go Charlie Cameron.
Very nice. Charlie Cameron, 57 goals at Brisbane. Dodd?
That's a good season.
Mm-hmm.
Might go Tex Walker here for Adelaide.
Adelaide's one was Tex Walker, but only 43 goals last year, so a little bit disappointing, but it's correct. John?
I don't think he played enough games here, to be honest, but was it Josh Kennedy over at West Coast?
At West Coast, it was not Josh Kennedy. I'm sorry.
No.
JD, if James gets this right, you are out.
I'll gladly sit this one out.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
I'll stick out west. Can we go Michael Walters?
You can go with Michael Walters. That's 40 goals for Frere. Great call. Todd?
I'm hoping it's Jack Darling then for West Coast, so I'll go Jack Darling.
It is indeed 59 goals last season. Back to you, James.
I think for Essendon it was Stringer, wasn't it?
For Essendon, it was Jake Stringer. Only 33 goals. One of the lowest from last season. I think might have been the fourth lowest or fifth lowest from last season. Or third or fourth, actually. Todd?
Oh, this is tough. I'll go Hawthorn.
We've got 9 clubs left.
9 clubs. All right.
So half the club.
We'll go Luke Bruce, Hawthorn.
It was Luke Bruce, yes. 34 goals. Only one more than Jake Stringer. Jim?
So now it's getting to that pointy end. Can we go Sexton from Gold Coast?
Sexton from Gold Coast is a great call. 39 goals last season. One of the ones that I just completely forgot about. And when writing this list up, I was like, okay. Dodd?
I think this is wrong, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Aaron Norton at Western Bulldogs.
Unfortunately, you're wrong, mate. Sorry about that. Jim, can you win?
How many teams are left, sorry?
I think there are 7 left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'm Talk
Talk us through your thinking process. You're the last one here. Talk us through your thinking process.
So what I'm thinking
if you get it right, you're the last one here. If you get it wrong, then Don's back in.
I'm trying to go club by club and just trying to think who would be most likely and who I thought would have kicked most goals. So I'll go St Kilda next, and I think Billings scored the most goals for them this year as well.
Oh, wow.
Lifeline, Dodsy, you're back in.
Oh, jeepers.
All right, so you know you've got St Kilda and Western Bulldogs wrong so far, and you've got 5 other clubs to choose from after that. Would you like me to read the clubs out for you?
Yeah,
Not
potentially.
No.
Not yet.
All right, 2-1 votes. Sorry, Dods.
All right. I don't think did he play enough games last year? Sydney?
Yeah, he did.
He did? I don't think he did. I'm going to go Isaac Heaney. I think that's wrong, though.
Yeah, it's wrong. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Jim, another chance.
Let's head back over to Great South Australia. Was Robbie Gray Port's highest goal kicker?
Robbie Gray was not Port's highest goal kicker. So we can keep going if you want to go. John, do you want to come back in? Do you want to have a crack?
Yeah, I'll come back in.
Hang on, I'll read the clubs that are left. I mean, you guys have got them both wrong a couple of times. So I'll read the 7 clubs left on the board. So we've got Carlton and Collingwood, Melbourne, Port Adelaide, St Kilda, Sydney, and Western Bulldogs remaining.
Was it Tom McDonald from Melbourne?
No, it wasn't. Melbourne's one was the lowest number from the whole league. Is 22 goals was
22?
The top
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's bad.
I think I know who it was as well.
Which is shockingly bad. Yep.
Whose turn is it?
Just go for a free for all at this point. No one's won it. So
right. We'll go Melbourne.
Like
22. I think that was Petrarca, wasn't it?
It was Petrarca. Yep, 22 goals.
Nice.
The next lowest around the league was at Carlton. Injury plagued man last year.
Sure, no, couldn't be.
Okay.
Jump in if you've got an idea. It wasn't Charlie Curnow, no.
No. Yeah.
Cripps?
No. Harry McKay dominated early on in the season.
Oh.
That's right.
26 goals to Harry McKay. The next lowest was at Port with someone. Anyone want to jump in?
Did Dixon get much?
No, I think Dixon might have missed a bit too much footy last year.
Yeah.
First-year player, Connor Rosie. 29 goals at Port was their top goal kicker.
Was it Tom Papley over at Sydney?
It was Tom Papley at Sydney, yep, 37 goals. And that leaves us with, I think, the 2 that you guys got wrong. No, we've got Collingwood, St Kilda, and Bulldogs. It wasn't De Goey at Collingwood either, no.
Stevenson?
Nope. Stevenson kicked too many goals elsewhere, mate.
Yeah. Was it Membry over at St Kilda?
It was Membry at St Kilda, yep, 44 goals. Actually, not a bad season.
Oh, Mychek.
Yeah, Mychek. Whose stats are actually really, really good if you have a look at his career stats so far. Is quite impressive. Sneaks under the radar there a little bit. And the last one left was the Doggies with a surprising name to me, at least, Sam Lloyd.
I wouldn't.
38 goals was their top goal kicker last year. So, yeah, I thought that was, when I sat down to write the answers to that one, I thought it would be mostly figure-outable. But as soon as I got through it, it was just like, this is not happening.
Even Richmond's rejects are the best that the Dogs can.
Here we go.
That means the game's had no winners in 2 weeks.
The game has had no winner in 2 weeks. That's correct.
Crazy.
Yep. And you guys had 2 rounds to go for it this time too. So
JD's come last in both games, but yeah.
It's another one down for Sam. So Sam 1, Luca 2.
I might have to bring out the child's version of this next week and see if you guys have a chance of winning it. So
my first footy team.
Name 18 AFL football clubs. All right, boys. Well, thank you for joining.
I did have to bring up the ladder.
That has been No Sweat for this week. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at No Sweat Podcast. And tune in next week. We'll be back right for you.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks very much.